Hello and welcome to another edition of the Boot Room with me, Stuart Watson, and him, Andy Warren, to look ahead to Ipswich Town's FA Cup fourth round replay against Burnley, Championship leaders Burnley, up at Turf Moor. We get to spend a lot of time in the car together tomorrow. Andy, looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think this might be a first for me. This might be my first ever FA Cup fourth round replay. Can't think of another one that I've attended. So another milestone moment.
So that's one off the bucket list, isn't it? Same for me as well.
Good times.
Well, this is the first time that Ipswich have been in the FA Cup fourth round since 2010. If they were to get through this tie, they would be in the FA Cup fifth round, which is the last 16, for the first time since 2007. So we know this is a competition Ipswich Town haven't had a lot of joy in, but they've worked hard to get themselves to this stage. They've beaten Bracknell and Buxton, obviously in the early rounds, but Rotherham of the Championship in round 3 as well, and performed really well in that first game against Burnley. More than a match for the Championship leaders at Portman Road in that 0-0 draw.
Yeah, it's been a fun little side project, hasn't it? For the differing tests of those non-league games, one away, which is an experience for everyone there, playing that live on TV at Bracknell, and then Buxton was a fairly routine job at home. Then Rotherham was a really good win and felt like a really big part of this season and a bit of something that would hopefully build some real momentum. It's not necessarily worked out like that, but the Burnley game played that role as well. And you're right, they went toe to toe with them in their own way, and they came out of that game with an awful lot of credit and feeling good about themselves, both as a team and as a club. I think all things considered. So it's been, yes, it is a side project, a side hustle. It's not the main aim, and Kieran McKenna's been very clear about that. About this competition has its place, and it's certainly not at the top of the agenda, but it's important, and it's played an important role in the season. So this game could do that too in its own way.
Yeah, it's an interesting one how Ipswich approach this in terms of the team that plays and mentally how they approach this, because there's a huge game against Sheffield Wednesday at Portman Road on the horizon this Saturday. But Ipswich Town, I think everyone's feeling a little bit flat after Saturday's disappointing draw at Cambridge. The form guide doesn't read great for Ipswich, dating back to sort of October time. And this could be a classic case of an FA Cup run breathing some much needed life and momentum into that promotion push and being something that aids Ipswich rather than being a distraction, couldn't it?
Yeah, it does. And I'd argue they obviously, you play any game, you want to win it. I don't think they have to win this game for it to be that either. It's a tough task this for Ipswich going to Turf Moor. That place has seen some really big nights and big days over the season so far. They're an incredibly good football team, and Ipswich have a real job here to win it. But I don't think they have to win it to come out of it with what they need and what could benefit them. So the aim is to win, and the aim is to win and set up another home game against a League One club, either Fleetwood or Sheffield Wednesday in the next round. But all is not lost if this is where Town's Cup run comes to an end. I don't think. I certainly hope it doesn't.
No, it's hard not to look at that draw. It's Fleetwood host Sheffield Wednesday in a replay tomorrow night. The winners, Ipswich would play the winners of those at Portman Road again, another home draw on Wednesday, the 1st of March. And you're talking about then being one win against a team from your own division away from reaching the quarterfinals of the FA Cup, which is crazy when you say it out loud. A lot of the big boys have fallen already. I'm looking at who's left. You've got both Manchester clubs and Tottenham will be the kind of the favourites out of those that have left, but there's still a fair few Championship sides knocking about in there as well. All that said, this is a big ask. I thought Ipswich played really well in the first game against Burnley. Clearly, the way that McKenna sets Ipswich Town to play is better suited when they go toe-to-toe against another footballing side. I think Burnley are the poster boys for what Ipswich Town want to be. They kind of epitomise how there's a high ceiling to how this brand of football under McKenna if they can get themselves out of League One, how it can then be effective in the division above. But I just think that wasn't a top level Burnley side that Ipswich saw at Portman Road just over a week or so ago, and this is going to be tougher this time around, I would imagine.
Yeah, and we talk about Ipswich potentially having a prospect of an FA Cup quarter-final in their sights. For Burnley, that's an even brighter prospect, isn't it? Because all they have to do to get there is beat 2 League One clubs at home, and by the time that quarter-final comes around, Burnley would favour them. This Burnley team should favour themselves over beating anybody up to maybe the mid-table Premier League teams. If they can get a home quarter-final draw against a Premier League team that's maybe got an eye on relegation potentially, they'd fancy themselves against that as well. An FA Cup semi-final here for someone like Burnley, they should feel really, really good about that, and they're in such a good position in the league that they're able to give it their full attention as well, aren't they?
Well, they've won 4-2 at Premier League Bournemouth already in an earlier round. They're 20 points clear of third place Watford in the Championship now, which is a hell of a margin. They won 3-0 at Norwich at the weekend. They've signed another forward player in Michael Obafemi since that first meeting at Portman Road. Tough ask against Vincent Kompany's side. Should we have a little discussion around what Kieran McKenna might do with his team? He reverted to the same starting 11 that faced Morecambe in that 4-0 league win at Cambridge at the weekend. Does he now go back to the team, or the bulk of it, that faced Burnley in the first meeting?
I think, yeah. Well, whatever happens, there's going to be real changes to it, aren't there? What that looks like, I don't know. I think there are some players that you can nail on for a start here, and Hladky in goal, who played so well in the first game, would be one of those. Janoy Janassian would be one of those, given Harry Clark's cup tied. Greg Lee would be one of those. Luke Wolfenden, you'd imagine, would come back into the team. But there are other areas of the pitch where there's a bit more debate to be had, I think. But whatever happens, it's going to look different to the team that started at Cambridge, and I'd imagine it looked very different to the one that finished at Cambridge as well, given how all over the place and sort of gung ho that ended up being at the Abbey Stadium.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd put Caden Jackson in as a very likely starter as well. I think he was most people's man of the match against Burnley in that first game, so he deserves another go on the right hand side. Who partners Wolfenden in central defence will be interesting. It was Edmondson in game 1 against Burnley. I'd like to see it go back to that. I want to see Edmondson, Wolfenden kind of given a run of games at centre half now, get a little bit of consistency in there. Central midfield is going to be very interesting. We think that Sam Morsey is suspended, having been booked twice in this competition, 2 yellow cards. It's competition specific, results in a 1-game ban. And Lee Evans came off with a bit of a knock at half-time against Cambridge. So those two did both start against Burnley at Portman Road. But might we see a double change there, possibly?
I think so. I think Massimo Luongo and Cameron Humphreys will get the nod in this one, and I'm quite excited to see that, particularly Luongo, who's got so much Championship experience in his career so far. He'll be able to handle a game against Burnley. He'll be fresh. He'll be dialed into what Ipswich are doing, and he looked good off the bench in the I almost call it the first leg. It's not the first leg. The initial staging of this tie. He looked good off the bench in that. So yeah, I'd be quite up to seeing what that combo can do.
That leaves 3 positions that we haven't discussed up front. Hurst back in for Ladapo?
Yeah, I think so. I think you need both of those with as many minutes in the tank as possible. You need them both up to speed, and we need them both to be dovetailing for Ipswich over the rest of the season. So I'd use this as an opportunity to give Hurst some more time on the pitch, and then you'd want both of them to be ready to make a real impact against Sheffield Wednesday at the weekend. So Hurst to get the hour, and then Ladapo for 20 minutes at the end. That seems to be the way that this works.
Yeah, agree on that one. I think Ladapo's been one of their best, if not the best performer over the last month or so. He was named Fans Player of the Month for January. Thought he was one of the few players that came away from the game at Cambridge with a bit of credit, but George Hurst needs some minutes in the legs. Didn't play a huge amount for Blackburn in the first half of the season. So for that reason, I think he starts this one, which leaves us with the sort of the two number 10 positions, the inside left and the more central number 10. It was Aluko and Harness for the first staging of this tie at Portman Road. Carl Edwards put his hand up, though, hasn't he, for this one after his impact off the bench at the Abbey Stadium?
Definitely. I think you have to play him. I think you have to play him in this one. I want to see Kyle Edwards up and running. I feel like we've spoken about this a lot in recent weeks. I think if you can get him going, and there are signs that you can. He was very effective on Saturday, and I'd want to ride that, and I'd want to let him ride that as well. So a start for Kyle Edwards, which then leaves probably a toss-up between Harness and Aluko for the central role in that, if indeed Edwards does get a game.
Yeah, I think I'm probably with you on that one, unless he decides he wants to go with sort of a Connor Chaplin or something, just to have a bit more of a kind of first teamer vibe to it. I don't know, but that would, if we go with that team that we've just outlined, that's 11 changes, isn't it? That's the whole team changed from the weekend at Cambridge.
Unless they keep George Edmondson alongside Luke Wolfenden, that would be that would mean it might only be 10. Whether it's Edmonton or Burgess with Wolfenden, we don't know. But yeah, 11 changes with Burgess, 10 with Edmondson.
Okay. Prediction time.
First to look at some key stats, Stu. You know the drill. No predictions until we've taken a look at some key stats. Now you can give a prediction, Stu.
I think Ipswich have missed their chance in this tie. I think Burnley were below par. Ipswich burst out the blocks. If they were going to get through this, I think it needed to happen at Portman Road. And there's a slight element of regret that they weren't quite able to turn that good performance into a win the first time around. I'm not sure Burnley will be so generous this time. I've got them down for a 3-0 Burnley win.
I've got a 2-0 Burnley win, a goal in each half, and I think we'll come away from it feeling that Ipswich have had a good time in the FA Cup. It served its purpose. They held their heads high after this game, but were beaten in both halves by a Premier League elect side. So yeah, a 2-0 defeat, but the FA Cup's provided something good for Town this season, hasn't it?
It has, and we'll be there to give you coverage, as always, up at Turf Moor, and then it will be all eyes on Portman Road and a massive game against Sheffield Wednesday on Saturday.